Hey folks, Steve here with another Red Strike video. We'll be looking at exercise scenario 6, North Sea, E6 North Sea. So happy to get back to recording these videos after a little bit of a break for some convention stuff. We're going to be getting back into it. Now, this is actually a smaller scenario, all things considered. There's only a handful of units being used, and you can see we're fighting kind of off the coast here at the North Sea region with the Skagerrak Sea Zone. And this is another one of those like NATO exercise scenarios where we have units that belong really, in the whole game to NATO forces uh, operating against one another, however hypothetical you want to make that. I think the key thing about this scenario is while we did a whole boatload, see what I did there, whole boatload of stuff in the last scenario, this is really an air sea scenario. So we are going to be dealing with some naval units. We're going to intermix the air, which so far we've not really done much of. We've done air and ground. Now we're going to do air and naval. And just sure enough, what's going to matter here is that we have a carrier naval unit that has its complement of air units on the carrier, and we're going to have basically some land based air attempt to engage with the aircraft carrier. So this is a good scenario, I think, to follow up the last one. So, like, the order makes a lot of sense here. While it is smaller, we're now having to do some more intermixing of mechanics. So, we had to deal with a lot of naval stuff, getting used to the cadence and the tempo there. Now there's this additional twist to it, and it's going to rely on some of the skills that we picked up playing the air scenario, the big air contested scenario, and understand how aircraft carriers work because they do work a little bit different than all the other naval units. And that yes, they do have their air complement, and they basically have cap on by default. This is where like the rules you really want to be careful reading exactly how these aircraft carrier units work and how all of this functions. Now, there are two air-based displays on the map. One is for the actual air base that the land-based air is going to be operating in, and they are technically Red Force here. So they'll be using the Warsaw Pact counters for all, the tracking of their resources, and ultimately we'll need to decide where on that air base we have them set up, offensive or interception. I think in this scenario it really only makes sense to have them operating in offensive mode because of the victory conditions, which we'll talk about in a second. Then we will have the USS Roosevelt air base, and we will need to decide where do we want these particular uh, carrier-based aircraft, which are probably going to be in some level of interception. I don't think there's a reason to put them on offensive. And then lastly, we're going to have the actual carrier itself placed in hex 4415, which happens to be right at the edge of the map over here, and it is currently undetected. So we will stick that on there for now. And that's really the scenario here, guys. So we're gonna play this now. In terms of the game track stuff, the Warsaw Pact player, basically the land-based air Red Force, has 6 supply points. That's going to be enough for them to execute air missions, basically. So like that's good. We are going to be limited by that. NATO does not have any supply because these naval units don't really use supply in that conventional way, and basically the air units on the aircraft are going to be able to defend the aircraft carrier without expenditure of supply, I believe. So I think that's the way that's going to work. There's a few tidbits of information that are in the errata for this scenario. So if you're looking at the printed rule book, if you're following along, I'm going to direct you to the living scenario book and point out that there was a notation made that the F-16s, um, which are going to be your these units here, have the same naval detection capabilities as other naval air units that have those detection capabilities. Basically, I think they set up the scenario, and then somebody might have pointed out that those air units can't properly detect, and so they're giving them that ability to detect for the scenario. That makes sense. So that's a bit of a rata. And then the other piece of rata is that the red player, red force, does get some recon points. 3, I believe it is. Let me double check. Yeah, 3 air recon points to use to help with the detection, I guess. Um, I feel like maybe both of those things are performing the same job, right? Either your recon points are going to do it, or maybe your actual air units are going to do it. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to check that out as we go here. But this is going to be a pretty simple scenario. There's really not that much more to it, and ultimately, we're only running this for one game turn. So it's really just, and I believe it's the red force that has the initiative. So all the scenario really is, and I'm sure this is still going to be a long video because we're going to talk through things as we execute. The reality will be that this is going to be a pretty simple scenario, but it will get us used to the concepts of aircraft carriers and fending off enemy land-based air or what have you, or any air, I guess, is going to be fine. Maybe we can set up ourselves some kind of carrier battle. That'd be funny. But there are some variants that we could use in this. So you could remove the electronic warfare unit, early detection unit, that is going to be available to the Blue Force. A couple other modifications. I mean, let's see here. Do not use the US E2 aircraft, right? So that would be the electronic warfare early detection aircraft. Do not use the cap roll. I'm not sure why I would use that variant because I think I need to learn the cap roll, or we need to see how the cap roll intersects with the carrier. And then we could optionally replace the Danish air units with some West German units. And I don't know, I haven't done the unit comparison. They may be better or they may be worse. In which case, maybe the scenario gets easier or harder with the different units. But I think playing this straight up is going to be just fine. The only one that I would maybe consider is taking this guy out of it, but I think we should include him because we've not used that unit before in these exercise scenarios. So actually get a chance um, to use them properly in a little more of a conventional context here, using a real map. Um, yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, so that's a little bit of the intro, guys. We're already mostly set up. Now the scenario does start with the unit assignment phase. So again, I suspect I need to do pure offensive here, and then all these guys are going to be in some version of their intercept or the mission type for the E2 unit. If we want to talk about victory, so like what do we do to win? Uh, at least one air unit must enter the hex of the aircraft carrier and make a successful bombardment. So we are going to have to get here and bombard. The scenario conditions, the victory conditions, are really oriented around Red Force as the protagonist here. So this is a good solitaire scenario. I think there are a few other scenarios that you could probably play 2-player, and even in the exercises like the Baltops scenario or some of the other ones where, yeah, you could maybe make a 2-player affair out of this. I think this is a 1-player affair, and you're really just going to be rolling dice and hoping to succeed. But you get used to the mechanics. So this is much more of a learning scenario than even some of the other ones that we played recently, where there's a little bit more give and take and back and forth. This is going to be a straight up shot. If we want to look at the actual units themselves, in terms of our capability, we can see they're just the same. They have really good ECM ratings, or pretty good ECM ratings. All things told, our bombardment is a 4, our anti-air is a 6, so we are going to be using our bombardment factors at a 4. 4's okay. You figure that's a 40% chance of a hit if we get through. Um, I think the question will be, do we need to run one of those guys as do we need to run one of those guys as an escort for the other plane and designate them as the particular bomber? I think if we look at the rest of the NATO forces and just draw a comparison here, I'm not going to worry too much about this guy, but in terms of the carrier units that remain here, we're going to find that, well, they have pretty good bombardment. Their anti-air is really, really good. They've also got some cruise missile capability. Um, so I would have to imagine we're going to need to do some escorting. I don't know. This is going to be interesting to see how we want to play this out. So I'm going to go double check the situation here. If there's any reason at all for these guys not to be in the offensive box and these guys to all be basically in the interception box, and we'll talk through the activity. I think the obvious thing, just to talk about strategy for just a second, if we use our air recon points to detect the aircraft carrier, I think that's an obvious thing that we try to do first as Warsaw Pact or as Red Force, just to get that out of the way, and then we can focus more on, trying to get in and doing the bombardment. I don't know that I'm going to like replay this scenario over and over again if I fail or succeed. I think talking through the mechanics is going to be enough here, and winning or losing doesn't mean a whole lot because it's really just going to be on the dice. Are we rolling effectively or not? And if we're not rolling effectively, it's not like we have that many other decisions to make in this space. There's not a huge amount of agency in the scenario because it's just teaching you about aircraft carrier cap and all that. Okay, so here's what the setup is actually going to look like for us. And I've technically done our unit assignment phase already, so we can talk about that very briefly. This is our electronic warfare detection plane. When they're in this mode, they're on this mission, they're always detected. And just to avoid cluttering up the hex, I'm going to set it right here, but technically this plane is in this location. Again, this unit's not very good at anything. It can't fight very well. It would be easy to potentially shoot down, I guess, if we wanted to go engage it. But the critical element of this plane is that it is going to provide really strong detection capabilities. So if we were to treat Red Force as Warsaw Pact units, and I guess that's just the easiest way to do this, the detection range from this hex is 10, which is beyond the range of our little map here, and the die roll for detection is a 7. So no matter how we want to set up our Red Force sortie and send our planes out, either separate missions or together or whatever, however many times we do it, um, they will become detected on a die roll of 7 or less. And really, I mean, you're talking that's a really high probability. So there's almost no way our planes as Red Force are not going to be detected. Because even if we were to not be detected by this guy, we're going to end up potentially being detected by the other plane units on the naval, the carrier, and potentially the carrier itself. So there's really no other way to say it. We're probably going to get detected. Now, let's say we get detected, we continue on. Well, I've put one of the Blue Force units here on cap. So to do that, so the carrier is undetected at the moment, and our cap is undetected. At the moment, it is flying cap above the aircraft carrier. Now, I'm leaving the other defending plane there on the carrier to operate as just a plane interceptor. And the thought being that we will execute an interception maybe before, if we can detect these guys, I might send an interceptor out first and then leave cap as the last line of defense rather than have cap be sort of the first defender like I think I've done in the previous scenarios. I maybe want to opt to send an interceptor out first and let that unit kind of be the first defending force, and then let Cap um, handle it if our first interceptor doesn't do the job. And of course, this is going to matter on whether or not these planes go as a group, or if they go one being a bomber, one being an escort, that sort of thing. It is all going to matter here. And I kind of have to think this through as Red Force. Like, do I actually get any better odds of trying to penetrate this defensive, you know, uh, setup that we've put Blue Force in? But as you could guess, I just have those two Red Force units on the offensive. I think there's no reason not to do it. And now there's a question of, do these planes get three sorties or or two? Because the Warsaw Pact is supposed to get two, but these are not Warsaw Pact units. So I'm just going to adjudicate these right now as being being available to go three times. I don't know if there's specific guidance out there around this, but we're not talking about Warsaw Pact planes, so we're gonna operate with that condition, I guess, in lack of something better. Um, so yeah, there you go. That's the unit assignment phase. Relatively straightforward. This is always detected, so he's just out here. He could be shot down, but all that would really do for Red Force is decrease the chance of being detected. If we look at, and these are the living charts, by the way, if we look at our charts, you can follow along by checking out the PDF. If we were trying to detect air by our carrier, um, that detection range is 4, which is still pretty good, and still detects at a 6. And then if we really had to detect with our other air unit, that would be happening at 2 range and would be 5. So there's a lot of capability for detection here. And we would end up using, as Red Force, we're going to use our recon points maybe to get some of these things, try to get a better gauge of what's out there before we go do our strikes, I guess, is the thought process. I'm not sure if that's going to be how good that's going to go, but I would certainly rather have the aircraft carrier recon so that when we do our bombardment, we're not suffering a penalty in that respect. Or I'm not. Maybe it doesn't matter for naval. I'm gonna have to double check that. That's on me. But we'll look at that. Just double checking very quickly. Yes, if we do not reconnoiter the naval unit, we will have that 20% penalty on our strikes against the aircraft carrier. So we're gonna just have to suck it up and reconnoiter it and then fight it. The Red Force units do not have beyond visual range weapons, so anything we do, we're going to have to just get up in there. Meanwhile, the defenders actually do have beyond visual range weaponry, and they could use that to fire before they get into within visual range standoff combat. I might not be describing that correctly, but there you go. So those are the stakes. I'm gonna double check. So I think the supply phase we're not worried too much about. The weather phase, I believe the weather is good. So we just get into that first initiative phase. So we're gonna look at how we want to send our guys out to do an attack. We are going to get multiple tries at this unless we get destroyed. So there's that, I guess. So if in our first gambit they take a hit and have to abort, they may get another try. Each of these units can take 2 hit capacity. Um, so yeah, they could afford to get hit once and then try it again, though their bombardment values will be worse. So we really want to win the air to air combat. And I'll just say, these guys have a value of 6. I think this is the same thing. Yep, both are a 6. And the defender operates with 7s. So all things told, I think this scenario, it's really just going to come down to die rolls, and generally all the die rolls are actually against the Red Force player here. So yeah, definitely a solitaire scenario around that. Okay, our first sort of rub here that we're going to have an issue with is we actually can't do a recon, a reconnaissance air mission on undetected naval units. So while the aircraft carrier is undetected, we actually can't go recon it to get to get rid of the penalty, which puts us in a weird position. I need to think about how to do this. So we can certainly send our planes up. That's not really an issue. And they could fly around and try to detect the plane, I guess, is what we would really need to do. Now, if we were interpreting these guys as maritime patrol air units with special rules, we could say that we would detect at max range of 5 and a 5 or less. So each unit would get a chance to detect at 5 distance. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'd have to fly out, get to here, hope that we actually, across the two planes, roll and successfully detect the naval unit. So we could screw up even doing that. That's already part of the thought exercise. So let's do. I guess I'm going to just have to do this here, though I'm doing this with some reservations. Maybe is we're gonna have our well, first of all, we're going to say mission start. We're going to have these guys go. One plane is going to be doing a strike mission. One will be doing an anti-air mission as the escort. Here, that's what we'll do on this first sortie and see what we can do. So we would start here, and really almost immediately is our chance to detect these guys as soon as they go, as soon as they leave, and as it happens, um, we're gonna roll that. We're gonna roll for both units, or maybe I only roll the once. But either way, we're gonna detect, and it's a 70% chance because of our uh, EWDA unit. So we're trying to again detect air units, maximum range. It's within maximum range, 7 or less, and yeah, both are detected. That was easy. So we see both of these things are revealed. This is their air mission that they're going to be engaging in, and they're going to move as a group. Um, Now, as they've been detected, we're probably going to say we're going to send him on an interception mission. And he likewise would be, we go find it, anti-air mission, and it's undetected, right, as we send him off, leaving the cap behind. So with these guys, first coming up, they're going to appear, and now we'll have these guys move 2 hexes. Boop, boop. Now, these guys, the interceptors, are going to get to move 2 hexes, but because we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 range, we do have that possibility of detecting the aircraft carrier as well as detecting um, the air units that are nearby. So if we're going to consider these guys Warsaw packs trying to detect um, at 5 range naval surface, then we need to roll a 5 or less. Both units will get a try, so we'll roll that. And we got 1 success. So this is actually a good thing. We have um, detected the aircraft carrier. That's mightily important. And then are we going to detect uh, air units? Well, we need to be in detection range of 2. So far, while we've detected the aircraft carrier, we don't know that their defending air units are in the sky, if I'm reading this right. So yeah, our air units trying to detect NATO air is, yeah, range of 2. So Now we have our intercepting plane going 1, 2. And I mean, at this point, I mean, we as players would know, okay, I'm detected. There's something undetected coming at me. Is there much more that I can do at this point? Do I try to snake around? If I go 1, 2, they go 1, 2, and then wherever way they go, they're just going to trail us. We might as well just move forward. So we are going to go ahead and continue to fly forward. At this point, we can try to detect the interceptor, and um, it is a 4 or less, and both units are going to have a chance to detect. And that is a detection. So now we see these guys are indeed uh, detected. Um, and I guess once we see what's going on, right, we came here, 1, 2, uh, we can move up one more. And at this point, the interceptor can fire. Now, if I look for a second here, aim 7M at a range of 1 is certainly better than a range of 2. So let's see here. Aim 7M, a range of 1 is a 6 or less. So we will certainly try to fire. Now this would have to be against the escort, but worthwhile. So we're gonna roll. In this case, the cruise missiles here would hit on a 6 or less, so we'll give it a roll. And they do potentially do a hit. So we rolled a 4. That would be 1 hit. Can their ECM save them? They've got a 5, which is pretty good. So we'll see. Um, it shifts 2 boxes over, but that is still 1 hit. So um, these guys take a hit, and unfortunately, the escorts are going to be going home at this point. So as that goes on, these guys are going to be exiting, and here, I mean, we're going to end up having ourselves a straight up fight, and honestly, I think these guys are going to be in trouble. Uh-oh. Yeah, and when we have the actual standoff combat, I mean, this is this is not going to be good. NATO firing on Red Force. That's going to be 3 less. ECM still causes a hit, and if they fire back now, knowing he's on a strike mission, he's not going to have. He is a multi-role unit, but his air-to-air is not going to be very good, and I think that's going to be a miss, to be honest. So that sucks. Okay, so he's going to take a step loss. Wow. And these guys are both going to be going home, I guess. So once that's over, they're aborting. This guy would come back with 1 less sortie. These guys come back with 1 less sortie. And not a great start for uh, the Warsaw Pact. That was very poor, actually. Not good. And they didn't get within the right range to detect the cap, even. Um, so that's not good. Not good for Red Force. That was a bummer. Um, Now, what we could do is start looking at reconnoitering, but we've still got this issue of, uh, well, and both of these guys only have 1 step left. Ugh, this is already a failure, guys. I don't know that we're going to be able to do much. I mean, we could do a reconnoiter check against the uh, the aircraft carrier, I guess. Now these guys, we could just go again. Honestly, the range standoff beyond visual range weapons are potent, um, and I think I would have marked that unit as such. But I mean, what else is there to do here? We would try it again, wouldn't we? I mean, let me just play a thought experiment here, guys. Let's just say we did it and we reconned. I'm going to just give it to the Warsaw Pact, or the Red Force, I should say, in this case. We recon the aircraft carrier, and we're going to go for this again, right? These guys start to do their thing. If they I can't remember if they would have to be detected again. They're detected, almost assuredly going to be detected. Then it's, this guy's going to intercept again. He's still good to go. He's spry. I mean, we just do it again, right? Fire at the escort, and we'll see if we hit. That time that was a miss. So okay, let's proceed, and then we fight an actual combat, and NATO rolls 4 underneath theirs, and the escort manages to turn that into just 1 hit, but he is destroyed. Um, and now that interception mission's done, so he's going to come back, and then the bomber could continue on, right? And we might as well. And we get to this point, maybe, right? And we would say, okay, well, can we detect the cap? We actually don't detect the cap. And this is where we would say, okay, we're going to go ahead and get our cap involved here. And they're going to fire, uh, at the 1 range, probably. See what happens. Um, that is a hit, and they fail their ECM, and we just got knocked out by the cap. And that's already the end of the scenario, guys. Like, that's it. I mean, technically that would have been our second action stage of trying again, and the defense of the NATO forces was just too good. So, what were the disadvantages? What are we learning from the scenario? This is a short scenario, evidently. One, the electronic warfare, very powerful. If we had some way to hit that in this scenario, we really didn't. So, if we could, like, smack that guy with a cruise missile or something and take him down, that would be ideal. Then we could fly from our air base and, maybe still get detected, but we would only be detected out at a range of, I mean, what? Naval surface, trying to detect air at range 4. So one, two, three, 4. And then we would be engaging interceptors or cap, somewhere around here. Would that be any better if it's not guaranteed we'd be detected? We'd be better capable of detecting the interceptors before they got to us, because we'd be in range, we'd have some opportunities. No guarantee that we would succeed, but I still think it'd be a little bit better. But we don't have the cruise missile to hit the electronic warfare unit. And ultimately, our units are just worse than the cap and the interceptors that the aircraft carrier is supporting. So, is it possible we could have shot these guys down? Yeah, it's possible, but they're just all around seem to be better planes, which I guess is not surprising that an FA-18 is better than an F-16. I guess that shouldn't be terribly surprising. But there you go. So now, if we were to play with the variant, and I don't think I will, because I think the lessons learned here are clear. Aircraft carriers are cool because they do allow you to deploy air, and their air platforms, right? Like, an airfield's detected. Like, the airfield is there. You can hit it with long range missile units. Well, the aircraft carrier over here isn't necessarily detected. It is undetected. And it requires some expenditure of scouting and forces, not reconnoitering, by the way. It has to be real units at risk to go find it. And even if you find it, they indeed will deploy their own interception or maybe flying cap or maybe deploying resources that, again, are providing a advanced benefit like the electronic warfare. Now, if we try to decompose this a little bit more and said, well, what if we had flown a mission to go attack these guys? Well, I mean, same story. We wouldn't even have gotten there, right? We've been intercepted here. And if we were launching that same mission to attack the electronic warfare air unit, we'd be detected and we'd be intercepted. So before we could really get in there. So as the scenario is defined as is, I would say we lack the meaningful capability to really get at that aircraft carrier. Now, I'd be very interested to see. Maybe I should go look this up. How other folks have done it, because to me this seems difficult. Now, we could also have chosen to instead be playing with German planes, and I suspect they're probably a little bit better than the F-16s. I don't know though. I'd have to go look. Um, but it's already tough to beat these interceptors. Their air-to-air ratings very good, the best that you can get, I think, at a 7, and their ability to use cruise missiles from distance or using missiles from distance and can't be responded to functionally gives them extra opportunities to damage the enemy, especially if those enemies do not have their own. So, really stacked against the Red Force player, but I think the lesson we take away from this, right, you watching this video and me playing it through, is yes, aircraft carriers are in fact difficult to tangle with, and you ideally want to be using maybe something else like, say, a cruise missile to foul them up. So finding some way, uh, sacrifice some planes to do some scouting. But if you've detected and if you've placed an aircraft carrier, that's when you use a cruise missile. That's going to be harder to deal with, and you're more likely to actually hit the aircraft carrier. I mean, and let's pretend for a second like we had some. If we actually look at the back of the aircraft carrier, reality is its ECM rating is actually really good, and it can take 3 hits. So there's no guarantee that we would have been able to do a lot of damage to the aircraft carrier if we had something like cruise missiles, but we could at least done something. If we do damage to the aircraft carrier, that's like deducting hits on a airbase, and we could have hurt their carrier planes and basically hurt their ability to operate. But I have a hard time seeing how we could really pull that off in this given scenario. But again, that's okay. This is a solitaire scenario, I think, for sure, and learning the lesson here. Like with all these things, and really, I could draw comparisons to another game system that is the South China Sea system set of games from Compass, where a lot of the same mentality applies there as well, where it's really about unpacking your enemy's defense, like what equipment or tool or unit, what do you have at your disposal in your arsenal, your weapon systems, to try to crack your enemy's defensive weapon systems, combat systems. So we sort of learned this in the Sedan scenario. We wanted to disrupt the enemy air, which would mean it would be easier for us to have air superiority, which enabled our ground forces to take the objective hex. Well, we use long range missile units to disrupt the air because cruise missiles are hard to deal with if you don't have a Patriot system. Um, and so we did that, and then we used our air, and then we used our ground forces. Here we don't have the relevant equipment packages, I think, to crack the aircraft carrier's defenses. That's my assessment of this right now. So I took a quick look around just to see if anyone's done this scenario, and I couldn't find a good session report on it. So I don't know. This one's kind of interesting, guys. If you have a different way to try to solve this scenario, I would actually be interested to hear about that, and I invite you to put that into the comment section down below, and we could figure out a different way to tackle it. I think just the Red Force does not have a lot on their side to help them out with this scenario, but it's entirely possible that I'm missing something, or would need to play around with the variants to see if we could get a better result. But good lessons learned, and I think we can move on to exercise scenario 7 next, which is Red October, which is going to put us back into some more naval submarine action, but I believe there's also air units in that one. So hopefully that next one will prove just as educational as this one, we'll say. And we'll see you in that next video. So thanks for watching this one. Hope it was informative and that you enjoyed it to some degree. Probably shorter than the other videos, not as terribly complex, but all the same, still good to go through and learn the system. So yeah, see you in the next one, guys. Take care. Keep gaming.